This podcast, including all discussions and examples, is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency or company. Today, we sit down with former Navy Commander Brent Gaut as he discusses his time commanding the USS George Washington, as well as what it means to be a leader for ADS. This is From the Dive Shop.
Welcome to From the Dive Shop, where we talk about our people, our mission, and our future here at ADS. I'm Patrick Shipp. Alongside me is
Hillary Stallings-Warren, and today we have Captain Brent Gaut, a former commanding officer of an aircraft carrier.
Good morning.
Hey, welcome, Brent. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
being
sir.
here.
Yes, sir.
We really want to hear from you, a quick rundown of what led to you joining the Navy and how you became a commanding officer of a major aircraft carrier.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Hey, so first, honored to be here with you guys today, and obviously, I was proud to be part of our company, and thankful for the opportunity to share the story. And it's not just my story, right? It's a story of all the incredible people that I got to serve with. So to start off and answer your question, your first question, how do you become a aircraft carrier commanding officer? It's not an easy answer because there's a lot that's involved there. A lot of people don't know that an aircraft carrier is actually commanded by an aviator. It's actually Title 10. So anytime you see an aircraft carrier, there is an aviator, either a front seater, someone who is qualified as a naval aviator, or a naval flight officer that is in command of that aircraft carrier, and is also the executive officer. Right?
So that means that you were a pilot
Yes.
at one point.
Yes.
Awesome.
So that's why it's a complicated answer because you start out your career as an aviator. And so I was blessed to start my career, went to flight school, got my wings of gold in September of 96. That was actually September 13th. It was a Friday. So got my wings of gold and then went to San Diego to train to fly the SH-60 Bravo Seahawk helicopter. So once I got through that training, it's pretty extensive. It's about 6 to 7 to 8 months. You go to your first squadron. And then went throughout my career. If you're blessed to select for command, then you'll select for command at some point. Later on, 15 to 16-year point, I think it was when I selected, 2007. So actually it was about 13 years, 2008, 14 years after getting my commission. So you select for command, and then you go through the training pipeline, and then you go command a squadron. So it just depends on what platform you fly. So our community, the SH-60 Bravo community, had transitioned to the MH-60 Romeo helicopter. It's not complicated. It just means we transitioned to a newer aircraft. It was an organic move in the sense that the same pilots that flew the 60 Bravo were now going to fly the 60 Romeo.
So I don't want to breeze past the fact that you were a pilot. Can you tell us a little bit about what that...
He was an aviator, Hillary.
An aviator.
Yeah, let's get that right, for the Navy guys
Okay,
out
I'm
there.
sorry.
Big deal for this guys.
Go Army. So what is it like to fly a helicopter? I have never been in one. I've never flown one. And I think our audience would want to hear what that's like.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Right. I think in general, aviators love their job, right? I mean, there's always going to be days when you're like, man, I just have so much because you have other things that you do. You're not just an aviator. You don't just jump in an aircraft and go flying. There's obviously a lot of other responsibilities that you have, blessings that you have to lead sailors, right? So you have other things that you need to do. So sometimes you're sitting there going, man, I got to go flying today because we got to get this done, and there's so much other work that I have to do. But that's rare. Most of the time, it is an escape from the day-to-day grind where you get to go flying and do something that you love to do. So it was an amazing gift and blessing. And again, it ultimately led to me having the opportunity to command an aircraft carrier. So I was very grateful for that part of my career and really was very content with that part of my career. Once you get into command and you command your squadron, whether you're a VFA, a fixed-wing fighter guy, E-2s, helicopters, whatever it may be, then you are going to go up for what's called major command. And that could be anything from commanding a wing of squadrons. You could be an air wing commander on a carrier. So things like that that you could do. But before you actually even get to that look, that it's called the in-zone look, to be selected for major command, what they do is if you're eligible, and what I mean by that is if you had like a C average in the sciences going through college, you've gotten through your command tour with at least one fitness report, they'll start to consider you for the aviation nuclear power pipeline. And so what that means is you'll get looked at that or for that prior to that in zone look for Major Command. And so that's what happened, right? So I finished my command tour, was actually blessed to get picked up for what we call bonus command. So there's a training squadron that trains the pilots to go to their ultimate duty station, whatever squadron they're going to. I had gone through that squadron as a student. I was actually picked to go back and command that squadron. So I had commander command, then was picked to go be the fleet replacement squadron command officer. And then once I got there, that's when I found out that I got picked up for the aviation nuclear power pipeline. So my family and I, hard conversations because it's a long pipeline. From the time that you start the pipeline going to school in Charleston, South Carolina, till you ultimately finish your command tour as a CO of a carrier, if you get to be one, if you get picked for that, because that's not guaranteed. It's an 8-year pipeline.
Wow.
So it's a hard conversation with your family, and at that point, we had our oldest son, Jacob. He's 11 now, but he was just a little guy. And so, talking to my wife, hey, are we going to do this? And so ultimately she said, I love you, I support you. And yes, if you want to do it, then let's go do it.
And what percentage of that 8 years are you actually on a ship?
So the first couple of years of it are pretty much just education, right? You're going to nuclear power school in Charleston, South Carolina. And then from there, you go to what's called prototype. Prototype is where you're actually on a submarine in the Cooper River right there in Charleston with an active reactor, right? And then you're learning, it's more hands-on, right? So you do the book work for about 6 months and then you're doing hands-on training. And then there's some additional training that you have to go through. So it's anywhere between 1.5 years to 2 years of that. And then once you get to an aircraft carrier as the executive officer, because that's the first job you're going to do, it's really almost 6 years of continuous sea duty.
Wow.
Because you're basically going to a ship as the executive officer. Then you'll have a break and you'll do some more training. Then you'll go command. It's called deep draft command. And that's that major command piece, right? So I commanded USS San Antonio, LPD-17. It's an amphibious transport dock ship. And so you got 400 sailors on board. You can carry up to 800 Marines and, take them into the fight. And so you'll go do that. So once you get done with that training between the XO job and that job, you'll go report as the CO and you'll command that ship for 15 to 18 months. At that point, your name goes back into a hat and then you're up for selection for the carrier as the CO. And then if you get picked, the selection rate's pretty high. It's most people do get picked. It's a small group of individuals. So usually you do get picked. Some have not in the past, but usually you do. You get selected, and then you'll go through some more training, and then you'll report to the carrier as the commanding officer. That tour is longer, and the reason they do that is because it's complicated, and you want continuity on board an aircraft carrier. So you're going to serve at least 2 years as the commanding officer, but you can go all the way up to 30 months. And so I got the blessing of serving a little bit past that on board GW. I was there for 31 and a half months as a CO.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you look back on that career and the advancements that you made going from a helicopter aviator to CO, what were some of your proudest moments in that?
I would say, it's obviously as you get older, you build up scar tissue and you're humbled a lot, right? You think of yourself one way when you're younger, and then it's all about me. What are you going to do for me? What's in it for me? And then you grow older, and I think you become, in my opinion, if you're doing it the right way, you become more selfless, less worried about self-preservation, more worried about, hey, what difference am I making, right? Like when it's all said and done and I'm gone, who's going to be there? And are they going to say, man, losing that guy or gal, that's a loss for humanity because they made a difference. And so you start thinking more about that. And so one thing that I do realize certainly is that it takes a village. It takes a village to build a commanding officer of any command, right? And certainly in my case, having the blessing of having 4 commands, there was a lot of people that sustained me, carried me, picked me up. Most importantly, my family, right? My wife, she's been with me since I was a lieutenant commander, and that's really when the journey started, right? When you get that fitness report and says, hey, you're the number 1 and you're going to get a chance to compete for command. And she's been there with me the entire time. And
you said you met her on the ship.
We
right?
did. She was actually, she's a Villanova grad, class of 01, and so she was a surface warfare officer. And so we actually met when I was on the Bella Wood as the mini boss LHA-3, she was part of the ESG Expeditionary Strike Group, or actually she was part of the Commodore staff, because you have a Commodore of the amphibious squadron, and so she was part of that staff. And so we met on the Bella Wood when the ship went on deployment, and became friends then. And then ultimately, she fell pretty hard for me. No, I'm kidding. It was actually me that fell hard. So
They always do. They
yeah.
always do.
So we have fun with the story with the kids. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of reasons to be thankful for the Navy, and the number one reason is that I met my wife, and so she supported me. My kids, obviously, our 11-year-old Jacob, our 9-year-old Faith, and our 7-year-old Nico. They've been through it. They were really going through that 8-year phase with us of going through as little ones. And us trying to figure out, and the proudest moment really is just my wife and I figuring out how to navigate that.
Hey, I want to go back to something you said earlier about going to the nuclear power school. So your undergraduate degree was in English?
English major at the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Nice.
then you said C's get degrees when it comes to science for that. What's
Yes.
going on there?
So when they look at you for selection, when the board is going to meet in Millington, Tennessee, and they're looking at the records, one of the things they have to ensure is that you had at least a C average in the sciences before they select you. So
C average, I love it.
It does. You're like C's, but they just need to make sure that you have a base, foundational knowledge in the sciences, because when you get to nuclear power school in Charleston, it's funny because Navy schools, a lot of times you say, oh, Navy school, I can make it through that, and everyone's like, it's hard, and you're like, yeah, I got it, and then you get there, and it's like the Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the face. You get hit there's a preschool there for 2 weeks, and so it's for the commanders that are going through, because we haven't been in school in a while, and then there's also some younger officers that are either nuclear-powered SWOs, surface warfare officers, or those young people that are going to submarines. So they're either lieutenant junior grades or ensigns in the Navy, and you're in a classroom with them. And so for those that need it, they give you 2 weeks of preschool. And it was during that 2 weeks of preschool, a lot of which you're going to see again in the first couple of weeks of the actual courseware. And I was sitting there, and I'm like, this is, Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore. Like this is tougher than I thought it was going to be. And I knew right then, I'm like, all right, dude, you're gonna have to buckle down. The running joke there when you're in school is that it's almost like you're on deployment. You just sleep in your own bed, because you're in the building at 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning. You're leaving at 7:30 or 8, and really you could stay longer than that. I had a goal when I was there. I want to get home in time to read to Jacob, because he was born in November of 13, so he was just a little guy. He's like 1.5 to 2 years old at the time, and so I said, you got to get home to read to him, right? And so I would get home, but I could have stayed in the building till midnight and still probably not got all the studying done that I wanted to get done. But you got to make decisions, right? And my family is important to me. So it's a challenge. It's a grind. And so you get through it. And again, you got a lot of people supporting you. And when you're struggling, you talk to people that have gone through it before, and they say, dude, just hang in there, right? Like, I know you're in the moment and you're like, I don't know if I can do this, but if you can fight through it and get to the carrier as the executive officer, you're going to love it, right? You're going to love being there on the ship, being with the sailors, making a difference in their lives. So just hang in there. And I'm really thankful that I did. And I had my wife to talk me off the ledge a couple of times when I was really struggling.
So would you say that that studying rigorously and the process of that was one of your proudest moments, making it through that to become? That's
a great question, Hillary. Yes, I would. I would say that. I would say that the things that I had to do to get through school, if you had told me 5 years before, for instance, when you're in prototype, there's an exam you have to take, and they're like, be ready, right? It's about 8 to 9 hours of writing. And in my mind, I was like, that's impossible. There's no way you can sit there. I'm like, what do you do? Like, you take a 2-hour break and just look at your phone and look at some ESPN, stories or whatever it may be. They're like, no, dude, you're gonna sit and write. And so when I got into that room, I came prepared. I brought a couple PB&Js and some other snacks and a couple drinks, and I had it sitting there for me. And it was legit. It took me about 8.5 hours to fill out the answers to that test. If you had told me that I would do that 5 years prior, I would say there's no way I'm capable of that. And so even that late in life, right, I was already post-command in commander command and also at the Fleet Replacement Squadron. To kind of discover what you're capable of. I think as we get older, we're so, the aperture kind of shrinks on what am I capable of. We're very comfortable with who we are. And that really forced me to get outside my comfort zone and say, hey, if you really want this and you want this opportunity, it's going to hurt. You're going to have to work and you're going to have to grind. And so I was proud that I was able to get through that. But again, with the help of my family and my friends that sustained me. And then I would say the last thing, when I was on the George Washington, we went through some significant tragedy. The ship was in what's called a refueling and complex overhaul. So every carrier goes through a midlife period and ships go through maintenance availabilities all the time, but they're usually shorter in duration. That midlife period in the shipyard for a carrier is really designed, it's going to be almost a complete overhaul. Got to put new fuel in the reactors, do things to the ship, things that needed, we just didn't have time to do previously. So we're going to have it sit there for about 4 to 4.5 years to go through this refueling and complex overhaul called the RCOH. And so when I got to the ship was already at the 4-year point.
You had sailors on board that their entire enlistment had been in the dock.
Right. Excited to join the Navy, excited to see the world, right? The commercials that we see.
Suffolk.
And the Navy is exciting. And it is, when you get out to sea and you're doing your job at sea, there's nothing like it. It's a feeling of like, even though it's hard, you're like, I'm seeing the world, going to these exotic ports and, just experiencing things that maybe I would never have had the chance to experience in my life if I hadn't joined, and they're not getting to do it. Right? They're in Newport News in the shipyard, and they're like, I hate this. This is not what I wanted to do. And so when I got there,
going out to CP Shuckers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. And not even that, because Newport itself, the city right where the shipyard is at, is not built to support a 19 to 20 to 21-year-old.
Right.
And what they want to do in life when they're not working. And so thankfully, because of what happened on our ship on the GW, the Navy's taken a hard look at that and really working hard to work with community leaders there in Newport News to build it up, build a parking garage right outside the fence line, to make it more accessible to sailors, so that give them more options there. So when I got there, the ship it had started the RCOH in January of 2017. So this is June of 21. So we're just about the 4.5-year mark, and the end was nowhere in sight. Throw in COVID and all the other challenges that the shipyard was having to get the work done on time, and the morale overall was not good. People just didn't want to be there, were disgruntled, frustrated, rightfully so. And so I got there, and I was like, but I was excited, right? Like, I cannot believe, pinching myself, I'm going to get to command an aircraft carrier, one of 11 ships in the world that does what it does. And when people say other countries have carriers, not like ours. They don't do what we do, how we do it, right? So 11 in the world that do what we do. You can say 12 because the JFK is being built right now in the shipyard. And so I got there and I was super excited. And, the crew just was like, here's this another old dude, right, who just cares about himself and just wants to make admiral, and he doesn't really care about us. So that's not how I'm wired, but I can't tell them that. They need to see it, right? And one thing I found out about today's generation, it's an axe generation. Don't tell me you love me. Show me you love me, right? Show me you care about me. And then maybe I'll think about following you and doing the things that you want me to do to help this ship get back to sea and, get back to the fight. So fast forward, so we're trying to fight through a lot of that, just the overall morale, low morale, and trying to get the ship rebuilt. And then in April of 22, April 9th, 10th, and 15th, 3 days that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. We had 3 suicides in 6 days. And so, I'm spiritual, so I felt like God had put me where he needed me on board that ship, and I was there for a reason. People are like, I can't believe you're going to a ship in the shipyard. I'm like, that's okay. I mean, we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to get this ship back to sea. But when we went through that, I felt prepared. I felt like God had prepared me over the 27.5 years of my career when I selected and showed up to the GW to take command. I felt like I was prepared for the moment. And in that moment, those 6 days, those were 6 days that I really struggled with. Do I know what to do? Do I know how to handle this? Can we? I was big into we, us, our too, right? Not I, me, my. It's not about me. It's about us as a team. Do we have what we need to try to navigate through this? And so that was a very challenging time. Obviously, losing those 3 sailors, the devastation of that caused their families, for their friends on board that cared about them and loved them. That was a moment where, okay, what are we going to do? Right? And I told the crew, and I'm a talker, so at that point we hadn't had an all-hands call in the hangar bay because of COVID, right? Because when I got there, we're still wearing masks. And I couldn't wait to get to the ship to have all hands calls in the hangar bay. We just couldn't do it. It was reckless. And so most of the talking I did to the crew was on the 1MC. We have an intercom system that runs throughout the ship where I can get on the 1MC from multiple locations and I can talk to the entire crew and everyone hears it. And so, but when that happened and we lost our 3 sailors, I was like, I have to meet with the crew. I have to look them in the eye. We have to get into the hangar bay and I have to talk to them. And I remember when I did, obviously I talked to them after the first 2. One was on a Saturday night, one was Sunday morning. I talked to them that next week on that Monday. And then we got through the week, and then on that Friday, one of our sailors took his life. And so I talked to the crew that next Monday, and got them in the hangar bay. And I could see, right, I'm talking to them, and I'm like, hey, we're either going to completely fall apart, or we are going to use this to pull together. Like this is, and it's not Brent Gaut's ship. This is our ship. Every one of us has a part in this, right? I mean, ideally, I don't expect you to care as much as I do, but I need you somewhere in the vicinity, somewhere in the area code of my care and concern and give a shit factor of how much I love you and care about you. So this is going to be us. When people see you walk down the street, they don't look at you and see your ball cap and go, oh, that's Brent Gaut's ship. They're like, oh, there's a George Washington sailor, right? And at that time, it was like, that's the worst command you can go to. And I said, if we're going to do this, we have to do it together. Right? And I can guarantee you this, every single day, at the expense of my family and my own well-being, you are going to get everything I have. I will give you every bit of what I have to give to you so that we can turn this around together. But I'm going to ask you to do the same. And so a lot of people came to me and they said, a lot of friends, and they're like, hey, they're going to fire you? And I'm like, I don't know. It's possible. I mean, a lot of times in the military, when something bad happens, someone's going down for it, right? And whether you think that's fair or not, that's the reality of it. But I was blessed to have a boss who told me, hey, listen, he's a 2-star admiral. He said, I believe in you. You definitely have some things that you need to clean up on the ship. But I think we have you and your executive officer and your command master chief. We have the right team in place to lead that team, to lead your team, to turn this around. So this isn't just a George Washington problem, right? Or issue or challenge, not problem, challenge. This is a societal challenge, right? Suicide. It's also a challenge across the armed forces. And so I'm going to do everything I can to support you and to allow you to do what you think you need to do to turn this around. Now go get it. I said, yes, sir. That's all I need to hear. And that was liberating in a sense because a lot of your career, whatever career it is, whether it's here at ADS or in the military, there is a little bit of self-preservation. A lot of times you're fearful of saying something or doing something that you know is right, but you're like, man, if I push back on this, I might not have a job anymore. And I need a job because I need to feed my family, take care of my family. In that moment, it was liberating in the sense of, you know what? I'm going to do exactly what I think is in the best interest of this ship. I know our job is to get it back to sea, but it's also to show these sailors, like, we care about you. We love you, right? And we're going to fight for you. And so working with my executive officer, my command master chief, and the other senior leaders on board the ship, I said, we're going to do it our way, right? And no longer when the admiral comes to me and says, well, I think you should be doing this, I'm not going to be afraid to say, I don't agree with you. I think we're going to, I have the pulse of the crew. This is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. And I need your support to execute that plan. And so, and he gave that to us.
And what did that look like? What did you do?
It was a process, right? I knew it wasn't going to happen right away. So there's a lot of listening. There was a lot of sitting down with sailors, and they just wanted to vent. Remember, there's a thing on the ship that's called the CO suggestion box, and so you can write a note and put it in a box outside the command master chief's office, and the command master chief is the only one that has a key to it. So he'll grab it and then bring it to me, and I'll read it. And before we had the first suicide. And again, I love talking to you guys because I'm going to be very open and honest and very transparent, right?
Yeah, please do.
There was a note in there that said, it was from one of our sailors, and it's anonymous. They don't have to sign their name. They can, and if they do, a lot of times I would bring them in to talk to them, to give them an explanation or to answer whatever their complaint was or their issue was. But it's anonymous, and they don't have to put their name down. And this sailor said, you know what? I can't stand you, and you're part of the problem, right? Like you're going to kill someone on board the ship. Someone is going to die, right? They're going to take their life. And when I read that, one, it didn't have a name. Two, I was like, I don't really know how to respond to that. I mean, I could get on the 1MC and talk to the crew and tell them I got this, but I don't know if that's the right answer. And so when we had the first suicide on that Saturday night, and then we had the second one Sunday morning, on that Monday, he put a note. It was he put a note in my suggestion box that said, I told you so. Now that blood is on your hands, right? So I hope you feel good about yourself. And so, so I took that, and I had one of three options. One was to ignore it. 2 was to get on the 1MC and say, hey, I am still the captain of this warship. I'm a captain in the United States Navy. I'm going to give you the respect that you deserve. I expect the same courtesy from you. Or 3 was to get on the 1MC, because that would have been ego-driven, the second one. The third was to get on the 1MC and say, hey, this is what someone wrote. I feel you. I see you, right? I understand your pain because I'm feeling it myself, right? I love those sailors just like you do. I can't fix this without your help. I need you to come tell me, what do you think we should do? What are your suggestions? How do we make this better? So if you come to the import cabin, which is where my office was, and we sit down and talk, there'll be no retribution. I'm not going to be upset with you. I'm just going to listen, right? I'm not going to defend anything. I'm going to write down everything that you tell me and take on board what you have to say, the best course of action, or the things that you think we can do to make this better. Because again, it's a we, us, our thing. It's not an I, me, my. And to his credit, he came by a couple days later and he sat down with me. He's a young sailor. He was a E5 in the Navy. He worked in the air department, and he said, okay, sir, I appreciate the invite. I'd like to sit and talk to you. And so we did. And sailors talk. So I think what happened was he left and he went and told some shipmates, and then they started to approach me and say, hey, can I talk to you? Sure, absolutely. I never cut myself off from a sailor. When they said, I want to talk to you, absolutely. And some of my senior enlisted would be like, hey, Captain, they got to come through us first. I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. Right? It's time to open the doors up. I cannot shut them down and say, hey, go through your chain of command. Right now, they're hurting and they want to vent. They want to tell me, this is why we're frustrated with you. This is why we're frustrated with the Navy. This is why we're frustrated with senior leaders. And Captain, if you really care about us, you'll do something about it. And so that's how it started. One of my, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but one of my favorite stories, and if I can share this last one about that time, there was so I started doing captain's calls. So in the hangar bay, set up some chairs, and sailors will come, and we do it a couple times a week, and it'd be from like 50 to 100 sailors from different departments would come and sit down. And so we had this group, and there was sets of chairs on both sides, and there was a small aisleway in the middle where they could walk down. And so I came down, and I never had a script. I just came down and started talking and said, hey, let's, how you feeling? What's going on? What can I do to help you? And so I get down there and I said, you know what? It was a Friday. I had just had a workout. I was feeling great. And I got down there and I said, I'm so excited to be here with you guys. About 100 sailors. I said, how many are excited to be here with me? And literally probably 9 to 10 raised their hand, right? So I'm like, okay, all right.
Reality check there.
That's fair. I appreciate the honest feedback. And so there's one sailor, and he was sitting probably 5 or 6 rows back. And he's right in the middle aisle, and he's kind of sitting slouched in his chair, and he's got his leg just kind of hanging out. And I said, hey, I was like, you're not excited to be here? And he's like, nope. Like, not even no, sir. He's like, nope. I was like, okay, why not? And he's like, because nothing's gonna change. He's like, this is all bullshit, right? What you're doing right now, you're just doing this because you're feeling pressure from the senior folks, you're the admirals and everyone in DC. And this is going to be, in a month or two, we're going to forget all about it. And we're just going to go back to doing the same thing that we were doing.
Wow.
And I said, and he was an E3. He was an ABHAN, right? Aviation Bosun Mate, Airman. And I said, okay. I tell you what, I appreciate, I got to give you a lot of credit. That took a lot of guts to say that to the captain of the warship, right? So I give you credit for that. And I'm thankful that you gave me that feedback. And then I said, 2, I fundamentally disagree with you. And I'm going to tell you why, right? And then I just went into an explanation of why I disagreed with that opinion. I said, listen, this isn't going away. There's not going to be an OBE, scenario overcome by events, right? We are going to stick to this, and I'm pretty confident that the support I have from senior leaders, DC is not going to forget about this. The admirals, my boss, is not going to forget about this. So now, right, we have everything that we need, the support that we need to actually do something measurable. But again, on the point of, it's not about just me. I'm one dude, man. I mean, yes, I'm the captain, but I need all of you every single time. And I knew they needed a little tough love at the point. And I said, and again, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way. I said, you know what? Every single time you come into work in the morning and all you do is bitch and complain about how bad it is, how about you look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, that's my team. That's my family. What can I do to make it better? And I'm not saying I don't want your feedback, but make it constructive. Captain, I'm seeing this. I think we can do this better. Have you thought about this? You know what, Bubba? I have not. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll talk to the other senior leaders, and we'll see if we can, review that, implement it, right? See if it makes sense for us. But don't just come in and start complaining about it. Don't be just part of the problem. Be part of the solution. And so I challenged them. And I know a few of them walked away from that, were like, whatever, typical. But I felt they needed to hear that, right? I was going to give certain concessions, but I also, it's okay to lead hard when you need to lead hard. And again, if you're going to do something, and if you have a vision for it, do it, execute it, right? And so one of the most satisfying things of my career was, so that was probably in May of 22. That was about a month after we had the 3 suicides. A couple months later, I see him in the hangar bay. I hadn't seen him in a while. And I said, hey, and I called him Monty. His call sign was Monty. I said, hey, Monty, how's it going? And he had a smile on his face. He said, good, sir. I said, what's going on? He said, well, I actually, I went on an underway with another ship. So we did that a lot, right? To get sailors, those junior sailors, some experience at sea, we would send them out on other ships, and then they would come back to us. He's like, I just got to go out to sea on another carrier and do some operations at sea. And I go, how was it? And he's like, it was awesome. I go, that's pretty fun, isn't it? Practicing your rating at sea, doing the job that you signed up to do. He said, yes, sir. He's like, I'd like to go on more of those. I'm like, well, look for opportunities. Tell your chain of command that you want to go on more opportunities, and we'll get you out there if we can. See him again, a few months later. So he had advanced to E4, and then during the course of that tour, he actually advanced to E5. And we had a family day cruise on September 23rd. It was a Sunday of 2023. I knew that the sailors, we do family day cruises in the Navy. A lot of times the ship's coming back from a deployment, and they'll invite the last port they visit before they get home. Like, let's say you're on the West Coast and you're going to San Diego. They'll stop in Hawaii. Family members will fly in. You'll fly some sailors home to open up racks on the ship. And then families will, with their sailors, will travel from Hawaii to San Diego. And they'll get to spend a few days underway.
Oh, cool.
I knew that our sailors wouldn't get a chance to do that because the ship was destined to ultimately go to Japan, where she is right now. Actually, today she's in Japan. And she made that trip over the summer of 24 in the fall. And so I wanted to do a family day cruise for a lot of the families that, they wouldn't have the funds to fly overseas to go see their sailors. So we did a family day cruise. And on that cruise, make your point, Brent. My point is that on that cruise, Monty came up, and we had 2,000. We had 2,700 sailors on board, and there was probably another 1,000 to 2,000 family members on board that we had that got underway with us that day. So it was jam packed. We go out, you do an air power demo, so you got jets flying by, and you just big picnic in the hangar bay, and it's just an incredible event. And Monty comes up with his family, big smile on his face, and he said, Captain, I'd like to introduce you to my mom and dad. And he said, I'm a left-handed Aquarius, so I get emotional. So I said I would love to meet him. And they shook my hand and they said, hey, thank you so much for everything you've done for our son. We're so proud of him. And I said, you should be proud of him. I said, you have raised an extraordinary young man, and he's making a difference for this warship. There's 2,700 on board. He's one of them, but he's making a difference, and more than just one, right? And so to come full circle from May of 22 to September of 23, where you see that growth in that young man and that buy-in, right? He was the case study of if you do it the right way and you make the hard decisions but the right decisions, you can get a group of people moving in the same direction, and you can get them to believe. We were big into that on the ship too, right? I would always tell them, believe in yourself and believe in us as a team. If you could just, because so many young people, they doubt themselves. I'm like, if you could see yourself the way that I see you, man, there's nothing that could stop you, right? So just believe in yourself and believe in your ability, right? And step up to the challenges that you face every day and be the best version of yourself. And so that was probably one of the proudest moments of my career, to see that. And he wasn't alone. There was others like him. And there were still some that were frustrated and would complain and didn't want to be there. But we had come a long way from April and May of 22. And then ultimately the ship getting back to sea. In May of 23, we finally got back out to sea after 6.5 years of the refuel and complex overhaul. And that was just an amazing day, right? To finally get that warship back to sea where she belongs with the crew. That first day underway, I had a sailor come up to me right before sunset on the flight deck. And I said, hey, how was today? And the sailor was crying. And the sailor said, this is the greatest day of my Navy career. And all the heartache, all the struggles that we had gone through in that moment, for me as a commanding officer, made it worth it. And I felt blessed to be a part of that crew.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's a tough start to it,
right,
but like a great finish.
Sure.
And that's always wonderful. And I had the opportunity to go out on that family cruise there in September. My son's in the Scouts, so we get to go out and do that. And I'll tell you what, that's definitely the coolest thing I've ever done.
Wow.
They bring in the F-18s, they come in and they land and take off, and you're like, how loud could it possibly be? deafening.
It rattles.
Deafening.
It rattles
It is
your bones.
Yeah, it was the loudest. I had the double ear pro and was just like, oh, this would be great. And we're standing on the superstructure there, and it was just like, just the sound was. Just
So we put
unbelievable.
bleachers on the flight deck.
Bleachers on
and
the
so
flight deck.
the family
It looks
sit in
like
the
a soccer
bleachers,
game.
and the jet
It's
literally
crazy.
when the jet comes in and lands and traps and catches the wire, you can reach out and touch it. I mean, it's that close, and
Yeah.
it's just extraordinary.
Crazy.
Yep.
That is
Yeah.
so cool. Well, next time there's one of those, let me know.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
We'll get you out there.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. And Brent, we had a couple conversations before this, and I remember you told a story about a sailor that came to you. He's like, I don't want to be in the Navy anymore. I want to go home today. And you kind of gave him those options. And with that story and the one you just told, the one thing that really strikes us is you're very approachable, especially as a leader, and that's something that I think you've seen in your career, and I saw in mine. There are two types of leaders in that sense. There are those that you just cannot approach and you cannot talk to, and they are too busy either going up, looking up, trying to get up. And then there are those that are just like, I was an enlisted guy before I was a colonel. I was I'm one with the troops. We're like being down there with the troops. When you look at like how now you've made that transition, you've left the Navy, retired and come to ADS, where do you see some of those leadership traits and leadership qualities that you're bringing to ADS? Where do you see the most potential for those right now?
That's a great question. I definitely think, well, when I first was blessed to interview for the position, and because really when I retired, I was just looking for, everyone kept asking me, what do you want to do? And I
Will
felt,
you tell everyone what your position is here?
right, I am
Yeah.
the deputy director for the Navy Marine Corps team in vertical sales.
Thank you.
And so when I was looking for an opportunity, once I left the ship in February 24, and I had a little bit of downtime before I officially retired June 1st of 24, everyone kept asking me, like, what do you want to do? And I felt like the 17-year-old or 18-year-old in high school when everyone's like, what do you want to do with your life? It's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm 17 or 18. Like, I have no idea what I want to do, right? I want to figure it out. I want to experience life a little bit and then figure out what's the best fit for me. So I didn't really want to back myself into a corner. So I would tell people, I don't know. I'm just looking for an opportunity where I think I can make a difference. I knew that it was going to be a challenge to fill so much of my joy from my job on the carrier came from the mission was going to happen. We were going to execute that. Like the Navy's really good at doing that part. The military's really good at that. The part I knew I was really going to miss was just the ability to help people. It is such a powerful feeling to know that based on your position, you have the ability to change the trajectory of someone's life literally in a day or a couple days or a week just by making a phone call or just by showing them, hey, I care about you. Like, let's figure this out. Like, what can we do to make this better for you? And so I knew I was going to miss that. And I was like, how am I going to fill that white space? So I knew that I had to do something where I felt like I was still serving. And so again, I believe God opens doors. We were looking for a church. We moved from Norfolk to Great Neck here in Virginia Beach in February of 24 when I left the ship. And we were looking for a church home and went to a church right down the street. And I saw a gentleman named PJ Cummings, who is a friend of mine who I had flown with when we were junior officers and who I knew worked for ADS. I think he's been with the organization for 10 or 11 years now. And I saw him at that church, and I hadn't seen him in about 4 years. And he said, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I just left the ship. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. And he said, have you thought about ADS? And I said, well, I have, because I know it's a local company, and I knew they do great work, but I just don't know how to go about it. And he said, well, you know what? I think they're just about to post a job for a deputy director position on the Navy Marine Corps team. And I said, can you send the details to me? So he did. And that's when I applied. And he came back to me a couple of days later and he said, hey, listen, I talked to the head of the Navy Marine Corps team, the director, Mark Carmichael, my boss, who's an amazing individual and leader and mentor. And he's like, I think they might be looking in a different direction. And I was like, all right, that's kind of frustrating. But, if I could just get in the door and just talk to him, I think I, would have a chance. And so another good friend, Creighton Holt, works for the company. So I called him up and said, hey, can I come get some mentorship from you? So he invited me to come here to ADS. And we grabbed a sandwich downstairs and went to his office. And we were talking. I was asking him some questions. And I said, hey, I applied for a job here. And he was like, you did? I said, I did, on the Navy Marine Corps team with Mark Carmichael. He's like, Mark and I are really good friends. We came into the organization together. And so he emailed Mark that day and said, Mark, can you meet with a friend of mine, Brent Gaut? We sat down and talked, and kind of like an informal interview. And then that was it. And then they called me up a few weeks later and said, we'd like to interview you formally. And then the rest is history. And I was so grateful because I do feel like the company, our team here, it's about helping the warfighter, right? It's about, hey, yes, we're a business. Yes, we have to make money. But we are fundamentally, like foundationally, we want to help the person out there, that young person, and old sometimes, that's in an organization that's doing everything they can to meet the mission and doesn't have everything they need, or they're not getting it the timeline in which they need it. And so I was really excited about that. So to answer your question, Patrick, when I was interviewed, I said, listen, I don't have the hard skills yet. I don't know business. I went to school, to the Naval Academy Preparatory School at the age of 18, and I retired at the age of 53. So I don't know business.
You got that good English degree, though.
But I did get the English degree.
Got that good English
so I can write a fitness
Got a
report,
C,
right?
yeah.
Got the C in science.
That's right.
You're ready. You're ready.
But I said, if you give me a chance, right, I'll learn the hard skills. And I'm confident 6 to 8 to 10 months from now, you're going to look back and say, that was a good hire for us. I'm not going to come in and say, hey, I'm just looking for a soft landing. I want to get after it, and I want to help people. But what I do bring to the table are the soft skills, right? I know a little bit, right? I know about leadership, how to work with a team. I'm driven by that. The Myers-Briggs personality, if anyone's ever taken that personality exam, E to I, right? Are you an extrovert or introvert? 22 to 0 on the questions, I'm an E. I love working with people.
I believe it.
I get energy from working with the team and working towards a common goal. So what I brought here with me and what I thought would translate is if you simply just ask someone, how are you doing today? How's it going? What can I do to remove obstacles for you, right? If I'm in a leadership position, what can I do to help you? Because I'm asking you to do a hard job. Our inside and outside sales reps, man, they are crushing it every single day, and they are busier than a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. How can I help you reduce that workload or make that a little bit easier for you? And I think that's a big part of what we do as leaders. And sometimes people just want to see, they want to know that you believe in them. They want to know that you'll stand up for them. They want to know that if they have a complaint or an issue, that you'll take it to senior leadership, even, right, at the risk of self-preservation. Like, I'm willing to take this to senior leaders and have that hard conversation. And that if the answer is still a no, that I'm able to bring that back to you to say, hey, right now we're not going in that direction. And also to own it. Like, not to deflect and say, well, the CEO or the CSO or the CGO said this, or the COO. No, listen, as a company, as a team, we're not going to do that right now, but I'll keep re-engaging on this point and looking for that opportunity where it might make sense. And sometimes that's all people need to hear, right? And if they can fundamentally believe that you care about them and that you have their best interests in mind, they'll run through a wall for you, right? When you ask them to do something, when you build that trust with them, and that's a big part of what I wanted to do here with the team, is build that trust so that when you come to them with a hard decision, when we talk to our team and there's like, hey, listen, we're just not going to do that, they might sit there and go, I just don't like that decision. I don't agree with it. But I trust the individual. I trust they've looked at all the options, they've considered it, they've weighed the options, and they are doing this in the best interest of the team. And so that's part of what I wanted to bring here. And again, I think people want to know that you're not just worried about yourself, right? That your relationship with them is mutually beneficial. I'm in this for you, Patrick, and I know that you're in it for me. We're going to help each other be better and to try to discover the best versions of ourselves. So,
Brent, thank you so much. These stories have been incredible, and we are so excited to have you at ADS.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sitting with us today and sharing your stories with us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, Brent, thank you very much. All right, well, that's it from the Dive Shop today. Stay tuned for the next episode coming your way sometime soon.
Hoo-yah.
If you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, please call or text 988 to connect with the Suicide in Crisis Lifeline. Veterans can press 1 after dialing 988 to connect directly to the Veterans Crisis Lifeline.